Okay, this demonstration is going to be about navigating around your image and zooming. It might sound like a really basic thing, but because there's so many different key command and mouse combinations that sometimes it can get a little bit tricky to get the image to do what you want, and you might be surprised sometimes when things zoom in and out and you're not expecting it. So I'm going to try to describe some of the ways that you can control that, or you can recognize what's happening if it happens unexpectedly. So the first thing I want to show you is that I opened up this picture of the car, and if you go to ManyBridge or your operating system, it's located in your lessons and then lesson 1 folder, wherever you happen to save that to on your computer. It's this first picture of the car. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you just really quickly a really basic way to zoom something really fast. Is in your tools on the left side at the bottom there is a magnifying glass symbol, and it's specifically called the zoom tool. You can also get that by holding down Shift Z as in zebra. So I'm just going to zoom in a couple of times, and you see that that sort of does like a step increment. And if you notice down here in the bottom left corner, alright, you'll see that right now it's at 50%. If I zoom in again, it jumps to 66.67, and then 100, and then 200, and so forth. If I hold down my Option key, I can zoom out, and you see that it still hits all of those same increments, 33.33% down to 25, and so on. And I want you to realize that those are the standard zoom percentages for the step or incremental zooming that Photoshop will do using the increment tools. And so I'm going to go ahead and zoom back in, and we'll zoom into about 50%. So that's a really simple way to zoom in and out, without having to know any kind of complex combinations. And again, as a reminder, to zoom back out, you hold down the Option key and your little cursor turns to a minus symbol. Let off the Option key and it turns to a plus symbol. If you're on Windows computer, it's an Alt key. So Option and Alt on Macs and Windows are the same thing. Okay, so on a Mac it's Option, on a Windows it's Alt. Okay, so getting that out of the way, let's look at this zoomed in image. One of the things that's really handy to be able to do is know that you can scroll up or down when something is zoomed in. You can scroll side to side. That's easy. You can also use your mouse to do it. I'm just scrolling left and right. On a laptop, I'm using my trackpad. Okay, another way to do it is if you grab the tool just above the zoom tool, it's the hand tool, and you can literally click and drag it around to make it go wherever you want. That's another easy way of doing it. And also, while you've got the hand tool, you can use your mouse pad or your trackpad or your mouse to scroll around. Now, something else that is useful to know is that you don't have to be inside of the zoom tool in order to zoom in and out. And that's kind of nice. I was in the hand tool. I just reselected the marquee. And I want to show you that you could be in a totally unrelated tool and still zoom in and out. Let's say that we're going to zoom in. On a Mac, you would use Command plus symbol. And on Windows, of course, it would be Control plus. And to zoom back out, it's Command or Control minus. And that's another step incremental way of zooming in and out. And of course, if you look back down at the percentage here in the corner, you'll see that it is still following the increments that are standard. If you look at those, it's 200, now it's 100, down to 66.67, down to 50, down to 33.33, down to 25, and so forth. Okay, so that is another way of doing incrementals. Something else that you can do for incremental is to do, like, say, an Option scroll, so, or Alt if you're on Windows. So Option, and I'm basically scrolling up to increase it, and to scroll downwards, I'm decreasing it. Okay. If I scroll to the right, it's on my computer, scrolling to the right side, is actually decreasing it, scrolling towards the left side is increasing it. Okay, so you can play around with that, and you'll see that that can be really handy so that you don't always have to switch to the zoom tool every time you need to get bigger or smaller. You can use the keyboard commands or the combination of Option or Alt and your mouse scroller, okay? Your mouse wheel, okay? Now there are also incremental ways to zoom in and out, and because sometimes you don't want those exact steps where it goes from 25% to 33%, to 50% and so on. And one of the things that is new in CS6 is if I were to go to my zoom tool, you'll see that there is a checkbox here called Scrubby Zoom, and that is by default set whenever you open it, and that is the new behavior that you're going to see. If you are used to using some older versions of Photoshop for any reason, there is a way that you used to be able to zoom into things by drawing a marquee around it, but now if you do that with Scrubby Zoom enabled, it's going to have a different behavior. So I'm going to keep Scrubby Zoom selected, and I'm going to show you some different things that will happen. So while I have the zoom tool selected, if I click and drag, you see what happens is that it incrementally zooms, and it zooms quickly, and instead of drawing a marquee, it's actually zooming, and whenever I'm clicking and dragging, I'm kind of clicking and dragging to the right. If I click and drag to the left without having to hold down Option, you see that the Scrubby Zoom will actually decrease the size. And also notice, like, it depends on where I actually place my cursor. So if I want to go ahead and zoom up in the top right portion to look at the clouds, I could click and zoom right to enlarge that section. And then if I zoom back out and I decide that I want to actually zoom back onto the headlight, I'm going to put my zoom tool in the middle of the headlight, and I click and zoom to the right, and I'm holding that mouse button down as I drag. And so that's what the Scrubby Zoom selection will do, is it will allow you to click and zoom to the right to enlarge, click, hold, and zoom to the left to decrease, and that's while the actual zoom tool is selected. Now, if I wanted to disable that, here, let's go ahead and first let's zoom back out. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So let me zoom back out, okay? And if I were to deselect the Scrubby Zoom, okay, and I click and drag, what it does is it draws a marquee and it'll pull that section incrementally up so that that section is full in the full screen section. Okay, now let me go ahead and show you something else that is going to work whether Scrubby Zoom is enabled or not. If I am in the zoom tool and I just click and hold, I'm not dragging or anything like that, I'm just clicking and holding, it's zooming in right where my cursor is. And if I want you also to notice, it stops zooming and you see that there's no plus symbol any longer. And if you look down in the bottom left, the maximum it can zoom is 3,200%. Okay, so 3,200%. Now if I wanted to hold my Option key down while I just click my mouse and hold it, it will zoom out. But notice that it's not doing it quickly, it's doing it very slowly. Like whenever I did the click and drag while Scrubby Zoom was enabled, it was really fast. But this is nice and slow, so I can actually have a little bit more control over what's happening. And that's whether Scrubby Zoom is enabled or not. So if you, whenever you were doing this before, if you accidentally clicked and held for too long before you started dragging when Scrubby Zoom was turned on, then it might have actually had that behavior, and that's what was going on. So I'm going to turn Scrubby Zoom back on, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm just going to click and hold. I'm not dragging, and you see that it still does that same behavior. However, if I click, hold, and also at the same time drag, I have the ability to go a lot faster. Okay, so if you're using a mouse, you would click hold and you would drag in either to the left or to the right. If you're on a trackpad, you can use one finger, like you could hold it down with your thumb and then move left or right with one of your other fingers. Okay, so those are some really simple ways of doing that. Okay, so something else that you can do that's really fast is if you want to fit something to screen, I want you to go up to where it says View, and then you'll see that there's a setting where it says Fit on Screen. Notice something else under View, where next to Fit on Screen, it's got the shortcut. So it's Command 0 on a Mac or Control 0 on a Windows computer, and it automatically will show it so that it's literally fitting onto the screen. And I would recommend using those shortcuts, getting used to using the shortcuts. Something else that you can do too, if you look under View, is you also have something called Actual Pixels, and the shortcut for that is Command 1 or Control 1 on on a Mac it's Command 1, on Windows it's Control 1. I'm not going to select it, I'm going to show you using the shortcut. So if I go to Command 1, it actually shows me zoomed in to 100%. So notice down here, it's not fitting to the screen, it's actually showing me how large the image is at 100% on the screen. And we're going to talk about resolution later, because sometimes people get really confused about why some pictures are very large on screen at 100% and others are very small. So we'll talk about how resolution works in a different video later. Okay, so those are two things. If I want to go 0, I can fit on screen, Command 1, and I can show the actual size at 100%. I think that showing the actual size at 100% is really important, especially whenever you're doing detail work and you're trying to make sure that everything's going to look right in your finished product. Because if you're always doing corrections with color or with other kinds of touch-ups and you're looking at it zoomed out, you can't really see how it's going to look. You always need to take a preview as you're doing your work back and forth to go into the actual pixel size so that you can see how your modifications are really affecting the image. Now, another thing that you can do is down here in the percentage is that you can actually type in an exact value if you want. So let's try 50%. We'll do that. And maybe that's a little bit bigger than we want. So let's try 46 and see. I think it's a little bit smaller. Something else that you can also do is that while you've got the value selected in the bottom left corner, you can use your arrow up and down keys to nudge the size so that it's nice and small, and then when you hit enter, it'll actually take effect. So if I wanted to select that and arrow up or down, I can do small modifications, and you can see how you can zoom that way. Okay, that's going to do it for the demo that shows you how you can navigate around your image with the zoom tools and the hand tools.